So with the Fate collab really soon, today I'm here with the should you or should you not summon for Rin. We're going to be going over what makes her strong in primarily the two roles that she does have, the vertical investment and what makes it actually strong as well, because she actually does have some pretty damn good vertical investment, and then reasons why you should or should not summon. And at the very end we'll have some basic vertical investment guide, because it does somewhat change depending on if you're running her for archer teams or if you're running her as a main hyper carry. Stuck grinding in Honkai Starro? Need stellar jates fast? We've got you covered. Head over to U7 Buy, your ultimate gaming hub for safe, fast, and cheap in-game top-ups. Whether it's Starro or your other favorite games, U7 delivers instantly and players love it. Check out their Trustpilot reviews, they're actually top ranked. On the Honkai Starro top-up page, you can recharge your account in seconds. When you head over to the page, all you need to do is pick the pack you do want, enter your UID and server, and buy now. If you want codes and coupons to apply, be sure to create an account for proper savings. USD is the recommended usage currency for best saving. Once everything is set, you can see the savings you're about to get. Want even extra savings? Be sure to use code PRESR at checkout for 5% off. Perfect for last minute pulls or surprising a friend. Click on the link in the description, recharge fast, save more, and keep blazing those trails. So Rin is an interesting character. As I mentioned, you can run her as a archer sub DPS, but she is best in slot, or you can actually slot her in as her main DPS. Her basic attack and skill are just whatever generic stuff, but she does have an enhanced skill, which is a pure bounce enhanced skill, which is able to continuously repeat once you burn all skill points. And also all her gem energy, as you do want to function building as much gem energy, because the more gem energy you have, you can consume for more bounce instances of her enhanced skill. As her enhanced skill does damage to all enemies, and then will consume 3 gem energy to additionally do the same multiplier to a random target, and will repeat until gem energy is less than 3, or all enemies are defeated, repeating up to 33 cycles. So you can do a lot of burst damage with that, just building up general gem energy, which is a very weird playstyle. You kind of just spam basic attack a bunch until you're ready, and then you just let it all rip. But besides that, she also is able to self-buff a lot. She also has vulnerability through her ultimate, so you can make the team do more damage. Really good for her own damage, really good for sub DPS on archer teams. But yeah, her actual traces is able to increase her own attack by 150% and quantum respin by 15%, which is really good just for free like that. And if archer's on the team, he gets that effect too. So no matter if you're running her as a main DPS or sub DPS, that effect's going to be active. And you're also insanely buffing archer at the same time, because 150% attack alongside 15% quantum respin is really good, and it's just something you have throughout the entire battle, because it just activates when you enter combat. So there's no condition, it's just there. She's also able to increase the team's upper skill point limit, so that's good for all playstyles that she has. More skill points for archer to burn through, more skill points for her to burn through. She's also not insanely hard to build, especially when it comes to the sub DPS part, because you do have to build her really fast, considering the ideal way to play her is faster than Sparkle, but she does have a self 20% speed buff thanks to one of her traces for 3 turns. You just need to either enter combat or use her enhanced skill. But other than that, she is pretty basic in every other front, besides her unique joint attack with archers. So not a whole new mechanic per se, since joint attacks already exist in the form of like Aglia's enhanced basic attack, Castra's skill when Netherwing's out. But this is the first time we're getting a joint attack between 2 actual units. So she's able to launch a joint attack with Archer if he's on the team, when Archer uses his skill and if skill points are 3 or fewer, or Archer uses his skill 5 times during circuit connection. Then once it's not already been triggered, they will launch the follow-up attack, which does 300% of Rin and Archer's attack as quantum damage to the enemies, and will also recover 4 skill points. So when you burn it down to 3, you can get 4 skill points back. That's 2 whole Archer's shots as well. So on top of the extra damage you are dealing throughout the battle thanks to this proccing multiple times, it's also just more uptime for Archer's skill point shoots. And if you're also trying to lead into Rin's enhanced skill doing damage, then more skill points for you to burn there. Now when we look at her actual vertical investment now, her E1 is something that's really insane for only really the hyper carry playstyle. For the archer teams, it doesn't necessarily do too much. Now, 1 instance of enhanced skill consuming 30 or more gem energy will give Rin shadow gem equal to the amount that was consumed. Holding shadow gem makes her have the enhanced skill. Enhanced skill consumes all shadow gem and does not trigger the effect that converts skill points into gem energy and won't consume gem energy. So you can pretty much get free high damaging enhanced skills. Since Rin's damage isn't something insane on the archer team, plus on the archer team she's not getting buff focus, that's why this dupe inherently isn't too insane when it comes to the archer team, but for a hyper carry, it's absolutely broken. Pretty much a must-have if you are running her a hyper carry, because it's just such a big damage increase. Lets you have a lot more damage output, especially with not being able to consume the gem energy with the shadow gem taking its place. Having enhanced skill, being able to build up a bunch. So yeah, this dupe is really insane for when it comes to hyper carry. It's practically required as like a bare minimum, but for archer teams, it unfortunately doesn't do too much. However, her E2, that's just a good increase for any team she's really on. Increases her own skill damage by 30%, and Rin being on the field will make skill damage dealt by all allies become 130% of the original damage. Increasing things to the original damage value is always insane, since this is a multiplicative increase. So this is going to be insane for not only her personal damage, but also archer's damage, because now all her shots are going to do 130% of the original damage. No one else on the team is using their skills to actively attack enemies, so you're mainly focusing on either her damage with the enhanced skill, or you're focusing on archer's actual shots. So both of them doing 130% of the original damage is going to be insane. Rin does an immense amount of damage at E1 when you do stack up the gem energy and then have the shadow gem stuff and then proc it like later on in the battle to practically one-shot bosses. With E2, that damage is going to be 130% of the original. So if you were able to somewhat one-shot with E1, you're able to one-shot even harder at E2. And then looking past her actual hypercarry playstyle, for archer, all the shots, as I mentioned, 130% of the original damage, they're going to be doing a lot more damage as well. So this dupe is also just generally really good. And then the other vertical investment would be her light cone. So it makes her easier to build with 18% crit rate. Anyone on the team consuming 4 more skill points will give it the wear Radiant Crown for 3 turns. Wear holding Radiant Crown makes the team ignore 20% of the target's defense, and skill damage by the wear will increase by 72% with effects of the same type cannot stack. So if she's on the team and you're running her hypercarry, she's always going to be consuming that skill point part. And then with Archer, he's going to be burning way more than that as well. So it's also practically a free 20% defense ignore and 72% skill damage for Rin herself. This would be the main priority you would go for if you're running her as a sub DPS, because the 20% defense ignore is good, and then it makes herself easier to build and makes herself do more damage with 72% damage percent to skill specifically, which is her main form of damage. But yeah, mainly for the 20% defense ignore. But this is also really high in priority when it comes to her main DPS playstyle, since her main DPS playstyle really wants to stack defense shred/ignore a lot more than others to really get that high damage going. So her light cone is also just generally really valuable. So E1, insane value for hypercarry. For archer, not really. S1, really valuable on both playstyles, and E2, also very valuable in both playstyles. So she does have a lot going for her. Now, finally, reasons why you should or should not summon. If you actively play archer, which is a lot of you guys, you have to pull Rin. There is like no universe where you shouldn't. Archer is still really good, especially if you have investment without her, but with her, it's just insane. He becomes one of the best units in the game again. Rin does so much for him, not only outside of just the 150% attack and also 15% quantum res. You get the synergy with the joint follow-up attack, Rin's own vertical somewhat also being able to further enhance Archer's damage. Also a bit of sub DPS potential since she is considered a sub DPS on that team. Also some vulnerability offer also you can make Archer do even more damage. And they just pair so well together. She also even provides some skill points through the joint attack. When tuned properly, you're going to be able to get that practically every Archer turn. So that's a lot more uptime on damage you do have. So anyone that uses Archer actively, I never in a million years would recommend to not pull her. You definitely should. She should be your utmost priority. And the more you use Archer, the more priority Rin should be. And then if you're looking for the hypercarry playstyle, I'm going to be honest, I only really recommend it if you do have enough pulls to at least get her E1 S1. That's going to be my bare minimum. If you can get E2, then better. And I also would advise you to have the right supports at fronting her the hypercarry playstyle, since you do also want stuff like Ceridra available, especially Ceridra E1. You want Sparkle and also especially Sparkle E2. So she is a more costly hypercarry to run. However, once you do have the Exodia pretty much, she is going to be one-shotting bosses left, right, center. So you have to make sure primarily Ceridra and Sparkle especially is available, because without Sparkle, Rin just feels so bad to play. Ceridra is able to double her nukes, so that's why it's so important. So if you do have those units with the investment ready and you're able to at least get Rin at E1, S1, she's going to be a very solid DPS to pick up. Those are really the only 2 cases I would recommend, because for anyone that's playing Archer, you just really want to pull her. Ideally, just at E0, S1 is going to be completely fine. If you can pick up to E2, that's going to be fantastic for the Archer team. And for hypercarry, if you can get E1, S1 at least, and you have the teammates ready, she's going to perform great. If you can get E2, S1, and you have the teammates ready, then even better. But those are the only cases where I'd recommend her hypercarry playstyle. Reasons to not would be the direct opposite. If you don't use Archer, maybe you don't even have him and you don't want to get him, maybe you're going to pick Gilgamesh instead. Or just in general, you maybe will pick him, but you don't use him. Then there's not going to be much point for Rin there. Then it would be only looking at her actual main DPS playstyle, since you only run her a sub DPS with Archer. So if you're only able to not get her at E1, you'd only be able to get her like E0, S0. I wouldn't recommend it, because at E0, S0, it's a lot rougher. You really want that E1. It's such an insane dupe for her hypercarry playstyle. The Shadow Gem does so much. And then her S1 is really important for the defense ignore/shred, since as I mentioned, you really want to stack it on her as opposed to other characters a lot. Since it's always a great increase across like any team, but for her specifically to really get those one shots you really wanted. And then another way would be if you don't have the teammates available, maybe your Sparkle is already in use or you don't have Sparkle. Same thing with Saridra. Maybe your Saridra is tied with your Finon or Noxo or your Zele even. In that case, I also just would not recommend her. Without the proper teammates and setup and investment, hyper carry Rin is going to feel really clunky and really weak. Hence why I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you have all the pieces available. Now for vertical investment priority. For Archer teams, I highly recommend picking up her S1 first, as her E1 does really not much at all on that team. So with the S1, you're giving 20% defense ignore to the team. You can stack that with the Genius Head, other investment in your supports like Sparkle E2, and Archer can do significantly more damage. Same with Rin on that team as opposed to not. On that team, you're not going to stack up a bunch of Gem Energy and Shadow Gem a lot with her E1. And she's not the focus of damage, so that's why the E1 is not as priority. So either S1 would be a really good way for her actual Archer teams. The next thing past that would be going for E2. So you'd go for S1, then you would go for E1, then E2. For Archer teams, you'd want to go for E2. If you can only stop at not S1. If you can only stop at E1, then I would just recommend having E0, S1, and just stopping there. If you can push for the E2 after that, then that's going to be really good. Then for hyper carry, that is the case where I would also recommend both E1, S1, but I would recommend E1 more as it just does so much with how the mechanic does work. So I highly recommend picking up her E1 before S1. But as I mentioned, you would want to get both because the defense ignore value from the S1 is very important. So it would be E1, then S1, then E2, with a high recommendation for hyper carry to pick up at least E1, S1. So for Archer specifically, E0, S1. If you want the next thing past that, it would be E2. Hyper carry, it would be E1, then S1, and then if you can get E2 as well for that, because the E2 is going to be really insane for both Archer teams and her hyper carry playstyle, then that's going to be even better. And that is the full should you or should you not summon for Rin. I do hope you found this video helpful. If you did, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell for future videos like this along with all the types of style content, and I'll see you later. Peace out.